was held this year in Llawen-glap Wamachan in eastern Wales. Over 400 programs competed for the coveted statuette, the Golden Yawn, or Le Bâillement d'Or, das Goldene Gennen. The program quality was unusually high this year, and the jury faced an exceedingly difficult challenge. In the category for informational programs, Albana Televisa was awarded a special mention for its hour-long nutrition program, Ugu Neznet, or Food Takes Time.
Als moet ik als het door maar gaat. Is kost me ik wat aromonië dat er is met goed terga uit. Oeps, ik kan. Or die uit. A marsje maar tot over je moet komen. Strobot, dit met die korwa ja daar gaat hij. Musmaita, etrui, e untrapata. Untrapata die jota baha, or die minota je mataka, e tompe, ta, e tu goed met daar gaat. Ta. Уж niet meer wat мальчику туда, и трит, тик, разматя вожу, издамо, издавойствами штата, и довольством тата, и путчки.
The Flemish gardening program, Van Sadje tot Rozenolie, or From Seed to Oil, was also well received. This was a 14-part series depicting the production of rose oil. The seeds were planted in the opening show, and we see here a glimpse from the 5th installment, subtitled Kommt es eigentlich jetzt op? Or Is anything sprouting yet? Icelandic chess program in slow motion attracted great interest, but not nearly as much as the Zuru Malawian series of 36 programs entitled We Wash Our Cities. We see here an excerpt showing the cleaning of Lotobomi Lane. And now to a genuine novelty. We might even call it a mother of novelties, to use the modern expression. It was a truly special occasion in the spirit of Glasnost. The well-known Tartar and dissident filmmaker, Sergei Ivanovich Rusenstein, suddenly and unexpectedly showed up with his protest film from the Stalin years. This was a pungent and gripping documentary of the secret Second Congress of the Shy. Sergei was himself shy and spent 12 years in Siberia for it. Light entertainment programs were many and varied. We might mention the Finnish entry, Sauna, 60 Songs About Death, and the lavishly produced Don't Rush It from TV Jahanapur. This is the famous 100,000 rupee quiz in which each program lasts all day.
Mr. Singham, the 100,000 rupee question to you is following. How many gallons of water is it possible to fit into a water buffalo? You have 6 hours and 30 seconds from now.
But best of all was the fresh and original presentation from Channel Fjord, The Endeavor of Man, a docudrama of everyday life from the series of the same name. Your narrator and host is the distinguished British actor Nickolas Grace. Have a good, long time.
Good evening. I am Nickolas Grace. Throughout the many years of my anthropological explorations, it is rare to come across something which is utterly unique. This evening, I have the privilege to share with you one of the most thrilling discoveries of my extraordinary career. An encounter with a man at his most idiosyncratic. A man who has overcome all the vicissitudes of life. We are, in fact, about to meet one of our planet's most enduring heroes in his own environment. This way. Good evening. In the house you can see in the background lives a man who will on this very day celebrate his 90th birthday. His name is Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen. Throughout his life, he's been the victim of a relentlessly cruel fate. He has a past so incredible that it is indeed worth delving into, which is what we intend to do in tonight's program. But let's go back exactly 90 years. Yes, 90 years to the place where the man was born. That is to say, the house which we see behind us. It is situated in Bø, in Lillehammer, in the far north of Lofoten, in Finnmark, in Norway. His father was a stewed codfish assistant in the local fisheries, and for all practical purposes, his mother passed away soon afterwards. He had one brother and 9 sisters, of whom 8 got lost in the mountains nearby, trying to catch their sheep and the family hedgehog before the arrival of the winter hurricanes, which came exceptionally early that year. In fact, in the summer of 1921. The day after, his father fell into a cement mixer, and his mother was left with 1 daughter and 2 sons, one of whom choked to death when swallowing the family's burden of debt. Courageously, Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen made up his mind to leave home, seeking his fortune as a pig breeder at a neighbor's farm. Unfortunately, the pig plague hit very hard that year, and Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen was forced to move south to the capital, Oslo, at that time still called Christiania. There, he signed on the coal steamer Bildekvalitet, sailing on the North Sea with a cargo of moles and rubber tires. Unfortunately, the Bildekvalitet was sunk by the German Kriegsmarine submarine Seewolf that very day, when she fired her first test torpedo, which led to the start of World War II. Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen was washed ashore like flotsam at the port of Le Havre, and served there as a resident curate for 3 months until he was unfrocked by the German Gestapo. He was sent to the concentration camp Schwarzenhemden, where he broke both his legs, and when he tried to escape by pretending to be a piano tuner who had just finished his day's work in the camp. He was to be hanged the next morning, but because he was so emaciated, he actually managed to slip through the gallows noose. Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen later wrote in a letter to his mother that his weight at that time was a mere 28.4 kilos. His mother, of course, never received the letter, as the German occupiers had confiscated the family mailbox and his sister. In 1945, Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen was liberated from the camp and served for 6 months as a hat and coat stand in the British Army in Kassel. 2 years later, after the plaster casts were removed from his arms, he was accidentally conscripted as a cook at the gigantic Egyptian dam construction north of Port Said. He was, however, unable to cope with the American foreman, and after 2 hours he was fired and was literally knocked out. Then for 1 year he lived by selling his hair to Tunisian nomads. Broke and starving, he found himself one day swimming the Mediterranean towards Malta. But having landed there, he was refused entry as he had neither passport nor identity. The Maltese forced him back into the sea again. But Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen remembered what his father had once said to him: "If you can't join them, beat them." So he got into a tremendous battle with the Knights of Malta and ended up being refused entry all over again. Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen then swam and crawled all the way to Dubrovnik in Yugoslavia, and there got on the train to Odessa in Russia. He worked in this part of the vast country for 6 years as a farm laborer, and subsequently had 2 of his toes cut off in a combine harvester. He was sent on the Trans-Siberian Railway to a hospital in Chabarovsk, and on a warm summer's day in 1956, he had a pair of moldy second-hand toes from Vladivostok sewn back on. After that, he had to use crutches for 6 months because the wounds developed gangrene, and he became desperately thirsty. But then he had the luck of being offered a job as a brake block at the local airport. One night, he climbed into the well wheel of a jet and was automatically and free of charge transferred to Tokyo, where he spent 2 weeks under the tarmac to throw the police off his trail. Life in Tokyo was hard. We have to remember that at the end of the 50s and the beginning of the 60s, the Japanese considerably increased their production of flashlight batteries. People all over the world were fascinated by the opportunity of using flashlights underneath their bed covers. Labor was needed, and Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen was willing to work. On January the 18th, 1963, he was employed at Matsushita battery plant as a battery quicksilver filler, earning 2.5 yen per month. For 3 years, Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen worked like a dog and slept like a log. But something was terribly wrong. Not with the dog, a cross between a bearded Great Dane and a collie he had bought, but with his weight. Normally, he was 61 kilos, but now he weighed more than 100. He went to a local doctor, who immediately found out that Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen was allergic to glass eyes. The doctor told him that he had lost his left eye during the attack on Pearl Harbor, and that Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen had better see another doctor who in fact had both of his eyes intact. The visit to the other doctor was disastrous. He found the reason for Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen's colossal weight was because his liver was stiff with quicksilver. The doctor advised him to stop eating tuna fish and took out his liver on the spot. He couldn't really afford the operation, but the doctor was willing to take his liver as a down payment. Then he advised Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen to take some fresh air in order to recover. Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen went down to the harbor, and luckily there was a job for him as a stoker on a Hungarian liner cruising the Pacific with some very wealthy Russians on board. Unfortunately, dogs were not permitted, and when his bearded Great Dane collie was found as a stowaway in the galley, Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen either had to shoot him or put him in the ship's cold storage chamber. Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen preferred the first solution, and to spare himself any sorrow or pain, he asked the captain to fire the gun. The captain did so, but the bullet went straight through the ear of the bearded Great Dane collie, whose name incidentally was Lillehammer, and embedded itself in Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen's nose. Today, it is impossible to discern that the nose of the man living in the house in the background had ever been hit by a bullet. Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen now found that he longed for home. However, the ship was in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and had 2 more weeks to sail. For 1 whole week there was no wind, and the sails had to be taken down and used as protection against the burning sun. The ship also ran out of water, and the passengers had to drink whiskey 24 hours a day. Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen, of course, was a teetotaler, but really he had no choice. In spite of being permanently intoxicated, he somehow realized that he would have to abandon ship. He managed to tie 2 incredibly dry loaves of bread under his arms and staggered overboard. Now he was alone on the high seas. But again, he was lucky. Later he heard that the Hungarian liner had dried up in the middle of the ocean. Nobody was rescued and nothing was found except for the remains of a bearded Great Dane collie. For the best part of a year, Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen drifted along with the oceanic currents. One day, the postman arrived with a letter from his sister. She had married a Dane, not to be confused with the bearded Great Dane from Copenhagen, and had moved back to their childhood home in Bø, in Lillehammer, in the far north of Lofoten, in Finnmark, in Norway, with their 6 children. She wrote that she was divorced and had been thrown out of the house. Not that she'd been divorced by her ex-husband, but by her children. It was they that had thrown her out of the house. She wrote that she wanted Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen to come home from wherever he was in the world and to help her with this delicate domestic problem. Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen dried his clothes with the help of some Venetian blinds which he had found in Italy. He had his hair cut, and proudly he started to make his way back home to help his sister. Shortly after that, he was broke, and he found that he had lost his way. But a detachment of Italian carabinieri arrested him on the grounds that he had lost his way in the Republic of Italy. But again, Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen was in luck. The chief of the Carabinieri turned out to be a great music lover. And when Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen had tuned all 63 grand pianos in the village, he was once again set free. Out of prison, Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen stole the chief of Carabinieri's bicycle and headed north. And about my person, I have a picture of the bicycle. Here actually is the bicycle. But Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen was not built for bicycling. In the Brenner Pass, he found the road blocked by a huge Swiss cow. Or, to be more precise, not a cow, but an enormous cow bell. Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen fell off the bicycle and knocked off both his kneecaps. But Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen was a strong man, and he dragged himself, with the help of his arms, to the Danish border. This was in May 1970. By accident, he ran into his sister's ex-husband, who had actually moved to Copenhagen. They immediately became great friends. The man was a bricklayer, and Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen was offered a job as a bricklayer's assistant in a special little Copenhagen town itself called Christiania. The work, however, wasn't easy, and after 10 years he was fired because he had laid the bricks upside down. Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen didn't receive any money until he had done the job all over again. By then, his arms had considerably lengthened, reaching right down to his ankles, and he was afraid to go out in the daytime. So, for 3 years, he hid in a small cupboard in the cellar of the Carlsberg breweries, and gradually his arms shrunk back to their normal length. Then, last year, Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen returned to his beloved Norway without a sign of the rabies that had been tormenting him since he left his job as a keeper at the Aalborg Zoo. He hitchhiked the last few kilometers to Bø in Lillehammer in the far north of Lofoten, in Finnmark, in Norway, carrying all his belongings in a small tobacco tin. But when he arrived, nobody was there. Everybody had gone. Even the house had gone. The only thing left was the mailbox, as you can see here, put back in exactly the same place, lovingly restored by the Norwegian authorities as a memorial to all the suffering in World War II. With his own hands, Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen rebuilt the house with wreckage from a certain Hungarian liner that he had found down on the beach. After that, the house was scheduled as a monument, and Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen was immensely happy. There is a very special reason for us being here today. As I said at the beginning of the program, Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen is celebrating his 90th birthday today. We all hope that in the years to come, Rolleiv Stang-Tallaksen will live in peace as a symbol of mankind's unquenchable stubbornness and dedication. He is receiving his pension now. So, let us shout out with one voice. Happy birthday, Rolleiv Stang. May you live forever.